Good evening, everybody. For those who have not met me before, I'm Andrew Gilruth, the Chief Executive of the Moorland Association. In a moment, I'll be handing over to Kate Russell, who many of you know well. She's been helping the MA for about the last 18 months on how we actually more effectively apply for burning licenses. And originally this was under the 2021 regs, but it's timely that she is involved. So we're handing over to her in a moment. Also on the call is Rob Beeson. He is the person which has put together the MA Land Manager's Handbook, which has assimilated as much of the information as we possibly can from DEFRA. And we've got to acknowledge and thank DEFRA for their effort in helping us make sure that that is accurate and up to date. He's putting a link to that in the chat in a minute. And that is important because that is a live document. So as more information comes through and clarification from DEFRA, that is where the information will be. And Kate will be talking about that in a minute. It is also the place where if we have posed questions to DEFRA and we're waiting for a response, we will also put that in the handbook so that you're aware that we're waiting for questions. You do not need necessarily to send that in to us because you're aware that's been flagged up. Equally, if a question is not there, you know you do need to flag it up because it has not been sent into DEFRA for clarification. Rob has also downloaded, for those that are looking for it, I know some of you have already started applying using the new DEFRA platform, but Rob has downloaded all the questions and put that into a PDF too, so that you can see what information they're going to be asking for as you start clicking through the screen. So all of that is available. We've also got Joe Pearson on the call, and we'll be coming back to that later in terms of next steps. So I think it'd be helpful just to remind ourselves that this is a follow-up meeting. So in the last meeting, we went through, if you like, the background behind the various stages of regulations since 2007. Since then, we agreed to have another meeting after we'd met with DEFRA last week, where they managed to clarify a number of points, which Kate will be touching on. And also the application form itself has been switched on yesterday, and some have had an opportunity to review that. Clearly, there's no monopoly on wisdom, so those that have attempted to use the platform or have further questions, do start. This is a good opportunity to share it. In terms of some key points to note before to just keep thinking about while Kate's talking, is it is important that you do keep sending that feedback and questions in, and also recording how long it takes you to apply. And Kate will be touching on the importance of that, because that is information we need to feed back to DEFRA. A number of you have asked questions about the site management statements, which you may already have for SSSI units. DEFRA have confirmed that if you have one of those, and it has been established that you can burn, and that was on a scientific basis, they will check that it meets those requirements. You do not need to apply for consent from Natural England. Again, that is your Natural England consent, and you can apply straight to DEFRA, but Kate will be touching on that. She'll also be explaining that whilst you can apply at the same time for both your Natural England consent and your DEFRA application, albeit DEFRA will then hold that application and wait for Natural England to send them the green light or not. That means that it, just from an administrative basis for those on the call which are actually making the application, it means you've got to get all your paperwork together in one place. I'm not proposing to discuss too much more about the legal situation which DEFRA has put everyone in this call under, other than the MA will be talking more about that in the next few days. So focusing back on this application process for a DEFRA to DEFRA for a license. Remember, DEFRA have assured us that they are here to help issue licenses, so they are seeking good quality applications, and they are also, and arguably quite rightly, proud that under the 2021 regs they did issue licenses even in circumstances where Natural England advised against it. So they did correctly use their balancing act powers to weigh up their responsibilities, or the government's responsibilities, on deciding whether to issue a license or not. So we should take that at face value and the importance of that. So next, if you're happy, I'll hand over to Kate. I'm sure she'll be happy to take, if you've got fundamental questions or important points which need clarification, do raise those as we go along, or put them in the chat, or leave them until the end. When we get to the end, as before, we'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll talk about next steps. So if I may, Kate, over to you, and I think you've got control and can share your screen.
Thanks, Andrew. Good evening, everybody. Just bear with me while I transfer over and share my screen and play this from the beginning. So hopefully that is now showing. Andrew, can you nod if it looks right?
Yeah, it is right, but you need to play it from the beginning. It's still in normal.
Okay.
That's it, that one.
We got it. Thank you very
Perfect.
much. Right, okay, so we're going to touch on some of the key issues about the application process and the evidence. And I think the message here really is, before you start, is being able to know what information you're going to be required to supply as supporting evidence, and being able to go and start harvesting all of that information together. And I'll come to a slide on it, but this is part of the reason why the MA is keen to get feedback from you on how long this whole process takes. Because as those of you who responded to the consultation will be aware, there was a question in there on the impact assessment about the cost to businesses of complying with these regulations. And so we're really keen to understand how long it actually takes you from start to finish and how many hours you're spending on it. But I've got a slide on that in a minute. So we'll just go through the main points. It's a reminder, I'm sure all of you on the call are aware, that now under the 2025 regulations, which came into effect yesterday, if you want to burn heather or other vegetation on any land within a less favoured area, so the previous rule of it being SSSI land, which is also SPA or SAC, is gone. Any land within a less favoured area where the peat is of a depth of more than 30 centimetres, then you need a licence from DEFRA. Just to go through this point about Natural England consent, if you are within a SSSI, yes, you will need to get your consent unless you've got an existing consent in a site management statement or equivalent document. Natural England consent is a different thing altogether, as I'm sure most of you will know, and you'll know much better than me, that the consent is about getting consent to do an ORNEC operation requiring Natural England consent. I'm sure many of you have applied for those before. There is a consent form available online. Rob's put the link to that in the back of the handbook. But the Natural England consent, when you look at the application form, is quite, it's just fact-based. What do you want to burn? Where? When? How are you going to go about it? In fact, it doesn't even specify burning. It's what operation do you want to do? How are you going to do this operation? When are you going to do it? And that's pretty much it. And we need to remember that particularly those of you who are interested in getting a consent to burn for wildfire mitigation purposes, Natural England don't have that as part of their agenda. So if they refuse consent because they don't think you should be burning in the SSSI, that is not necessarily going to mean that DEFRA will refuse you a licence. DEFRA has indicated to us that it has given a licence in the past in a position where Natural England refused to give its consent, and therefore the opportunity to carry out those burns was given. So we're not going to go further into the Natural England consenting process tonight, but you can all go and have a look at the form online if that's what you need to do. We're going to go straight into the DEFRA form. Well, you need to get your ducks in a row, essentially. There's quite a lot of evidence gathering required. You may need external support for some of that evidence, but if you can start understanding what evidence is needed and start gathering that, and then continue to gather it, hopefully future applications will be easier than your first one. Let's hope so anyway. The default position is that DEFRA expects you to apply for a single year license, but there is an opportunity. You can apply for a longer license if you want, and then you're going to need to explain why it is that you need that longer license. So that is an opportunity that's open to you. So back to this point about wanting some feedback from you. We want to be able to show DEFRA what the impact of this is on you. And I suspect that it will take some people quite a long time to complete this process. Others who have all the data to hand may find it relatively straightforward. But we're interested in knowing, when do you start applying? When do you actually submit? So how long has it taken you from the starting point to actually submit? And then how many hours within that are you spending finding evidence, filling in the form, asking other people for evidence? How long does it take them to get the evidence back to you? And then which parts of the form are problematic, if any? Are they technical problems? Are they problems of not understanding what's required? Is it that you can't upload a map? Do you get kicked out halfway through? Anything like that, feedback to us. Rob has created an online form on the website, so it's really straightforward to be able to type that in, and then it's dead easy for us to analyse that and take up those issues with DEFRA on your behalf if you want us to. We've also got the email address for the team at DEFRA if you want to contact them direct. So please do that, and we will be sending you occasional email reminders asking you to send us that information. So where are you going to start in your application process? Well, I think important firstly to remember you only can make one application per land holding. So you need to make sure you've got all of the information you need for that land holding before you start. You need to be thinking about where you want to burn. So understanding from the start where it is that your burn patches are going to be, mapping them on a plan, checking the peat depth in those areas to make sure, if you're less than 30 centimetres, you don't require a licence, don't forget. Recording the 8-figure Ordnance Survey grid reference for the sites where you do want to burn, and keeping a record of the vegetation type. We'll come back to some of those points at the end. The next main question is, why do you want to burn? Because there are 4 reasons set out in the regulations. You can use different reasons for different burn areas. It doesn't all have to be for the same reason, but each of those reasons has got its own evidence requirements, and that's what we're just going to look at now. So the first reason set out in the regulations, you can see it there, for the conservation, enhancement or management of the natural or historic environment for the benefit of present and future generations. So this is your conservation reason. And if you want to apply to burn on this basis, you need to include a restoration plan using DEFRA's template. Now, again, there's a link to that template in the handbook that Rob's prepared. So download that and have a look through the restoration plan. You'll see what's required. In some cases, you may be competent to do that restoration plan yourself, particularly if there's a limit to how much active restoration is required. But it may be that in some cases you need an ecologist support or other technical support to prepare the plan. So again, timing wise, you need to be looking at what's going to be required. We've had a couple of discussions internally about whether the conservation reason might be one that some of you might want to use when tackling heather beetle. So if so, have a look through the template and make sure that that's going to be suitable for delivering the plan that you have. And if you've got anything in there where you think your objectives don't really fit in the template, again, feed that back to us, because I anticipate the template was not really designed for that kind of approach. It was probably designed much more on blanket bog restoration, which is the main focus for some of this work. So that's section A, conservation burns. The next reason that we're going to come to, we're not taking them in order, but the ones that I think you will want to use, the next one is to reduce the impact of wildfire. Just for those who are geeks among you, the 2025 amendments to the regulations have changed the word to impact. It was previously risk. So it's actually addressing the impact of the wildfire rather than reducing the risk of it happening, which is perhaps semantics, but is a slightly different emphasis. And similarly to the previous one, you need to do a plan using DEFRA's own template. And again, you can get the link to that template in the handbook. What that management plan requires you to do is to look at your site. What is it you're aiming to do and your objectives? You then have to go through a risk analysis phase, looking at the current risks, identifying ignition points and risk areas and so on, and your proposed ideas for how to address the risks. And then a wildfire response plan element. There is room in there to include additional maps, for example, access points, water points, and so on, rendezvous points. And then you will also be required to show that you've consulted with relevant other parties, including Fire and Rescue Service, your neighbours, other people who have an interest over or close to the land. So there will be lots of things to think about in this wildfire management plan. Again, some of you may be very able to tackle that yourselves and produce your own plan. Other people may want to get some help from consultants to do that for them. But that is the main body of evidence that you're going to be required to submit for this category of burning. The final two categories that are available, there's a category for the safety of any person where you have to evidence the risk, the specific risks to people, but that excludes wildfire because if it's wildfire addressing, then you use the wildfire reason. So I'm not entirely clear as to whether anybody has submitted a license on that basis. And then the final one is for research or educational purposes. And I'm not going to go into that today because it's obviously quite specialist. Most of it, it won't apply, I would imagine, to very many, if any, of you on the call today. The eagle-eyed among you will have spotted that we've had A, B, C, and E. And that's because reason D, which was that it's not possible to use mechanical cutting, has been removed as being a sole standing reason for granting a license. And that was as a result of the consultation that we've just gone through. Right, so the application form itself, I hate these application forms myself. I like to be able to see all the questions in advance so that I know what I'm going to need to do and I can think about the answers and I can work up my application backwards and forwards, not necessarily in a linear fashion. But this one is one where it's all online and you answer the first question and that enables you to move to the next page. Now, at any point in that, you can save your application and go back to it later. Although we have already had someone flag up that they tried to do that. And then when they tried to log back in later, their password wasn't recognized. So again, just be careful. And if you have those issues, you can email heatherandgrassburning@defra.gov.uk, or you can come to us and we can raise it for you. And because this is very difficult, not being able to see the questions before you start, particularly when you've got big evidence packs to produce, what we have done, Rob very brilliantly this morning has done a screenshot of each page of the questions in the application form, and he's put the link to that in the chat already, so you can go and have a look through that and then you'll be able to see the questions that are being asked. We have asked DEFRA if they can produce something for us. They have sent us the first thing that they could manage to pull together today, but it's not as helpful as what Rob has already done. So we will continue to work on that with DEFRA, and if we can get something more useful that you can get an overview of all the questions, then we'll do that. And then in addition to those big evidence packs, the wildfire plan or the restoration plan, the other data that you have to produce for each and every burn site, and you will be able to fill in, I think, up to 30 burn sites before you need to then go for a continuation sheet. For each and every burn site, you're going to need to provide the grid reference, state the reason, whether that's conservation, wildfire, safety of people, or research. Those are click boxes. A text box to explain why burning is necessary for this particular area. And then the length and width that you estimate the burn will be in meters, details of the main plant species in that area and the percentage of the land they cover. They want to know what kind of vegetation it is that you're burning, average height of vegetation on the plot, And then you'll be able to select an option from a drop-down box about describing this vegetation. Is it pioneer, building, mature, or degenerate? So that's its age stage. So in all of this, I think there is going to be different people probably involved in pulling all that information together. It may be that you have keepers who are going out and looking at which plots they want to burn, then being able to say what size they're going to be. It may be the keepers that then give you the information about the main plant species, percentage of land they cover, and measuring vegetation height. It's probably helpful if they have supporting photographs to support that for each plot. You may or may not want to include them with the application, but it might be useful to hold that information. So this is information you want to be going out and getting now. And then the wildfire plan, the restoration plan may well just take a bit longer to do. A final point is the reminder that the new heather and grass management code, change of emphasis in the title, change of emphasis in the content, has now been published. That came out yesterday as well. You will need to review that. It's important that you have read it and are familiar with it, and it's important that anyone who's going to be involved in vegetation management on the land has also read it and understands it. So a useful bit of in-house training for your team to make sure that they've done that, and maybe you just sit down with them and make sure everybody has been through it, understands it, and see whether they have any questions on it. And again, if there's any feedback on that, please do let us know or let DEFRA know direct.